Hey folks, it's your friend, the masked wrestling fan, and I recently had a viewer request for me to discuss the career of one Ravishing Rick Rude. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you've been sleeping under a rock, Ravishing Rick Rude was a professional wrestler, gained a lot of fame and fortune in the 1980s. Through the 1990s, unfortunately, passed away at a young age, I believe in 1998 or 99. His career had ended due to an injury in 1994. He was gone from the ring for a few years, came back in 1997 as kind of a bodyguard type of guy for other wrestlers. But we're going to be discussing Rick Rude's career, and I've actually written down some of my favorite Rick Rude matches that I'll get to in a minute. For those of you that don't know about Rick Rude, there's plenty of information and videos you can enjoy on YouTube. Of course, many of you fans probably became aware of Rick during his days in the World Wrestling Federation, the kind of the second half of the golden era. He came in 1987 to the WWF in the summer, was quickly put into a bit of a feud there with Paul Orndorff. Briefly, both men were managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan, but Heenan took favor to Rude's physique over Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff's, and before you knew it, Paul Orndorff was back to being a good boy, a good babyface boy, and feuding with our buddy Rick Rude. Now, before that, Rick had been in the National Wrestling Alliance as a World Tag Team Champion. Before that, he was in World Class Championship Wrestling. He was their first world champion, as they called it. He was the final American champion in World Class Championship Wrestling. This is going back to 1985. 1986, World Class decided to secede from the Union of the National Wrestling Alliance, and Rick Rude went from being the America's champion to the World Class Championship Wrestling World Champion. And Rick Rude had a very important match against Bruiser Frank Brody at the Kevin Von Erich, actually it was the David Von Erich Parade of Champions there in 1986, and about 21,000 people in Texas Stadium. That was a bit of a downfall, though, because World Class had 43,000 2 years earlier and about 33,000 a year earlier for that same Texas Stadium annual show. But in any event, Rick Rude had a good feud with Iceman King Parsons. Before that, Rick Rude was in Florida Championship Wrestling with Percy Pringle, who would become Paul Bearer. Jesse Barr was actually a tag team partner of Rick Rude's. Before that, Rick Rude, believe it or not, was in Mid-Southern Wrestling, Mid-South, you call it Mid-Southern, Memphis territory, where he did some wonderful things with Jerry the King Lawler. And before that, he was just kind of a young upstart under the tutelage of Mr. Wrestling 2 as a good-looking babyface in Georgia Championship Wrestling. He had some involvement in the Larry Zbyszko Mr. Wrestling 2 feud over the national heavyweight title in Georgia. And before that, Rick Rude kind of got into the business as a jobber, a young boy, losing to the likes of Don Kernoodle and Sergeant Slaughter in the Carolinas. Now, around the circuit we just went with Rick Rude, he came to the ring oftentimes with the song Sade's Smooth Operator, a very lovely woman, Sade. I wonder if she and Rick Rude ever had a dalliance. In any event, Rick Rude, like I said, World Wrestling Federation is where probably most of you know him from, would go on to be in WCW, and now I guess I'll get to these matches. But if you really want to learn about Rick Rude, of course, he did kiss women oftentimes in the ring. The manner of which he perished is under scrutiny. Different stories going around, but let's just celebrate some of his matches. So if you want to watch some good Rick Rude matches, look for these. Ravishing Rick Rude and Manny Fernandez, the Raging Bull. I believe the match was broadcast on World Championship Wrestling, the 605 show, WTBS, Saturday night, December 5th, 1986. Rude and Bull against the Rock and Roll Express. Now, the Rock and Rolls had just come off a big victory over the Andersons, Ole and Arn Anderson at Starrcade, in a cage. They were pretty beaten up. And Rude and Bull were looking to win the tag team titles. Check that one out. The next one I've got
couple of years later, Rick Rude and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. These two guys would be in the ring together many, many times, and this was their highest profile match in the WWF. Many people have forgotten about this match, but I haven't. Rick Rude and Ricky Steamboat at the Royal Rumble 1988. Now, this was actually the very first Royal Rumble show on television. Not just a match, but a show, a whole, about a 2.5 hour show. And Rick Rude and Ricky Steamboat had a nice match on the show. I believe it actually opened the card. This was actually the show that also had the first ever 20-man Royal Rumble on television before it was a pay-per-view. The Andre the Giant Hulk Hogan autograph signing and the Jumping Bomb Angels, I believe, were on the show as well. So, pretty good show there. Dino Bravo did the bench press challenge. A lot of things happening, but Rick Rude and Ricky Steamboat actually put on a wrestling clinic. I'd suggest that one. Moving forth, WrestleMania 5, I believe Rick Rude and Ultimate Warrior, that is, stole the show. They had a nice match for the Intercontinental title, and I think you should watch it. If you haven't seen it, it's a very good match. A lot of people say that the Ultimate Warrior wasn't a particularly good wrestler, but Rick Rude always seemed to get the most out of him, in my opinion. Moving forth, Rick Rude did go back to WCW, and this is where I believe Rick Rude's career peaked and unfortunately ended. This was the 1991 to 1994 World Championship Wrestling run. He comes back at a Clash of Champions, and I want to say this was late October, November of '91. Rick Rude, I think he actually came back at Halloween Havoc '91, but here he was supposed to challenge Sting for the U.S. title. You should really watch this entire program. Don't just skip towards the match, because they ran kind of a show-long program with Rick Rude, Sting, the U.S. title. That's a Clash of Champions. It must have been November of '91, I would say. Moving forth, the War Games, 1992. If you haven't seen this one, it's an excellent match. Paul Heyman managing, as Paulie Dangerously at the time, managing Larry Zbyszko, Bobby Eaton, Arn Anderson, Ravishing Rick Rude, and a very young, stunning Steve Austin against a real nice All-American boy team of Dustin Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, the Russian, Sting, Barry Windham, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Now, I'm not going to give away anything. I think a lot of you fans probably haven't seen this one, but this is War Games 1992. I believe it was, I want to say February or March, but look that one up. That's a great one. And Rick Rude's in that match. Moving forth, Beach Blast 1992. It's Rick Rude against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I believe it was actually a non-title match. Rick Rude was the U.S. champion. 30-minute Iron Man match. Now, this is 1992. Now, many people, when you say Iron Man match, they automatically think of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. But this was before that. This was 1992. Moving forth, Beach Blast, a year later, Rick Rude does another 30-minute Iron Man match, this time against Dustin Rhodes, once again for the U.S. title. Tremendous match. And I did skip over one. I'll go back to it. November of '92, Rick Rude and Sting once again on a Clash of Champions. I believe it was November of 1992. It was the King of Cable Tournament semifinals. Okay, folks, this is your buddy, your friend, a mass wrestling fan. Our buddy AJ there had requested some information about Rick Rude. Cut the music. I want everyone. See, I don't even want to do a Rick Rude impersonation. It's kind of insulting to the man to try and take his words. But I was a big fan of Rick Rude. Most people were. When you say fan, he was one of those classic bad guys that wasn't looking to court favor. He wasn't looking to be a cool heel. He was looking to be someone that you did not like, and but he earned everyone's respect. And I think the women enjoyed his washboard abs. The male wrestling contingency enjoyed his wrestling ability, and I was always a fan of his work, his dedication to the business. From all reports, he was actually a very nice guy in real life. So we tip a hat, we tip a mask to Ravishing Rick Rude. So this is a Mass Wrestling Fan here on One Pro Wrestling and Sports YouTube channel, and so on and so forth. Mass Wrestling Fan saluting Ravishing Rick Rude.